Imagine you are sitting right here with me, close to this crackling campfire. Feel the warmth on your face and watch the orange sparks dance into the night sky. It's peaceful, isn't it? But now, I want you to do something difficult. Close your eyes and imagine this fire disappears. Suddenly, the warmth is gone. The light is gone. You are standing in the middle of a vast, silent forest, and it is pitch black. This was the reality for our ancestors for thousands of years. Without this glow, the world was a terrifying, freezing place. Have you ever wondered how they survived? When the sun went down, the world became a kingdom of shadows. There were no heaters to turn on and no lamps to light the way. Our ancestors slept in cold caves, listening to the hungry growls of predators in the darkness. They were just like any other animal, shivering in the tall grass at the mercy of the wind and rain. In those days, we were small and vulnerable. Fire was a mystery, a power that belonged only to the gods or the lightning. Tonight, as we sit by this flame, let's go back to that time. Let's explore how we moved from the cold shadows into the light. This is the story of how a single spark changed the destiny of humanity forever. Long before humans knew how to make fire, nature was already creating it. Nature is powerful and sometimes very loud. Imagine a massive storm. The clouds are dark and heavy. Suddenly, a bright bolt of lightning hits a dry tree. The tree explodes into golden flames. This was the red flower, as some ancient stories call it. It was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. Early humans watched this from a distance. They saw forest fires caused by the heat of the summer sun. They saw red, glowing lava flowing from volcanoes. To our ancestors, fire was a living thing. It moved, it breathed, and it ate wood. It grew bigger when it was fed, and it died when it had nothing left. They watched how the other animals reacted. The lions and the wolves ran away from the heat. The birds flew far away from the smoke. But humans were different. We were curious. We noticed that after a fire, the ground was warm. We noticed that the smoke kept the bugs away. Slowly, we moved a little closer. We felt the warmth on our cold hands for the first time. It was a gift from nature, but it was a wild gift. It could burn a forest or keep a family warm. Could we capture it? Could we take a small piece of the sun and keep it for ourselves? This was the first great observation of our species. We saw a power that scared the rest of the world, and we decided to learn more. Imagine a group of humans walking through a forest after a lightning storm. Most of the fire has died out, but one fallen branch is still glowing red. One person, perhaps braver than the others, reaches out. They pick up a smaller stick and touch it to the glowing wood. Suddenly, a tiny flame jumps to the new stick. They are holding fire in their hands. This was a light bulb moment before light bulbs even existed. At first, these encounters were probably accidents. Maybe someone dropped a piece of meat into the hot ashes and realized it tasted better. Maybe they realized that sitting near the glowing embers kept the nighttime chills away. They began to experiment very cautiously. They learned that fire needs to eat. If they gave it small twigs, it stayed alive. If they gave it too much, it grew too fast. They started to use fire from these natural sources. They didn't know how to start a fire yet, but they knew how to keep one going. Imagine the excitement in the group. They had found a way to bring the light into their cave. They used fire to see deep into the shadows where they used to be afraid to go. This was the first step toward taming the wild. Fire was no longer just a scary disaster. It was becoming a tool. It was a bridge between the wild world and the human world. But there was a big problem. What happens if the fire goes out? In the early days, losing your fire was a tragedy. It could mean the difference between life and death. Because they didn't know how to create fire from nothing, they had to be fire keepers. This was a very important job. Imagine traveling across a vast plain. You are carrying a hollowed-out horn or a thick piece of bark. Inside, there are glowing embers covered in ash. You have to protect it from the wind. You have to keep it dry during the rain. If the embers die, your source of warmth is gone. Groups would take turns watching the fire at night. Someone had to stay awake to add a log or move the coals. This created a sense of responsibility. People had to work together to protect the flame. If a tribe moved to a new home, they carried the fire with them like a precious treasure. It was more valuable than gold or tools. Imagine the stress of that person. Imagine walking for miles, holding a smoking bundle, praying that it doesn't go out. If the fire died, they had to wait for another lightning storm. That could take months or even years. This struggle taught us patience. It taught us how to plan for the future. We weren't just living for the moment anymore. We were thinking about tomorrow's warmth. The flame was a fragile guest that needed constant care, but soon, the human mind would find a better way. Eventually, humans stopped waiting for lightning. They became the creators of fire. This was a turning point in history. How did they do it? They probably noticed that things got hot when they rubbed together. Think about when you rub your hands together on a cold day. They feel warm, right? Our ancestors noticed this while they were making stone tools or working with wood. They invented the fire drill. This was a simple stick that they spun quickly against a flat piece of wood. The friction created heat. The heat created a tiny bit of black dust called char. If they blew on it gently, it started to glow. Can you imagine the first person to do this on purpose? Their heart must have been racing. Spin, spin, spin. A little smoke appears. Then they added dry grass. They blew softly. Whoosh! And a flame appeared. They had created fire from their own hands. Other groups used the percussion method. They struck two special rocks together, like flint and pyrite. Every time the rocks hit, a bright spark jumped off. If that spark landed on something dry, a fire was born. This was true freedom. Humans could now go anywhere. They could move to colder climates like Europe or Northern Asia. They didn't have to wait for nature to give them a gift. They had the power of the sun in their pockets. This spark of genius changed our biology and our brains. We were no longer just animals. We were inventors. With controlled fire, the human world changed overnight. The first major change was our safety. Wild animals, like saber-toothed tigers, are terrified of fire. A circle of flames around a camp was like an invisible wall. Humans could finally sleep deeply. They didn't have to keep one eye open for predators. Better sleep meant better health and better thinking. Then there was the food. Cooking is actually a way of pre-digesting food. When we cook meat or vegetables, they become softer and easier to eat. This meant we didn't have to spend all day chewing tough, raw plants. Because cooked food is easier to digest, our bodies could use that energy for something else: growing our brains. Scientists believe that cooking is one of the main reasons humans became so smart. Fire fueled our bodies and our minds. Cooking also killed germs. People became less sick. Babies grew stronger. The population began to grow. And of course, there was the warmth. Fire allowed us to survive the Ice Age. It turned a cold, damp cave into a cozy home. We could dry our clothes. We could melt ice for water. We could stay active even when the sun was down. Fire wasn't just a tool. It was a life support system. It allowed us to conquer the planet. Something beautiful happened when we sat around the fire. We began to talk. Before fire, humans went to sleep when it got dark. But fire gave us extra hours in the day. In the evening, after the hunting and gathering were done, everyone sat together by the flames. This was the birth of community. The fire provided a center point. It was a place to share food and tell stories. Older people could teach the younger ones about the past. They shared lessons about which plants were safe to eat and how to track animals. This is likely where language became more complex. We had time to explain feelings, dreams, and ideas. We started to sing songs and dance. The flickering light on the cave walls looked like moving pictures. This might have been the first movie theater. Fire brought people closer, literally and emotionally. It created a sense of us. We started to develop rituals. Fire became part of how we buried the dead or celebrated a new birth. It became a symbol of the human spirit. Even today, when we want to be close to friends, we often gather around a fireplace or a barbecue. That feeling of safety and friendship is an ancient memory. It is a memory of the circle of light that kept the darkness away. We became social creatures because the fire invited us to stay awake and connect with one another. Because fire was so powerful, almost every culture on Earth has a legend about where it came from. To ancient people, fire was so amazing that it must have come from the gods. Think of the Greek myth of Prometheus. He was a titan who loved humans. He saw that they were cold and shivering. He stole a spark from the sun and brought it down to earth in a hollow stalk of fennel. The gods were angry, but humans were finally saved. In many Native American stories, fire was stolen from a selfish monster by a clever animal, like a coyote or a raven. These stories show that we recognized fire as a stolen power, something that belonged to the heavens, but was now in our hands. In ancient Rome, there were the Vestal Virgins. Their only job was to keep a sacred fire burning. If the fire went out, they believed the city would fall. In many religions, fire represents purity. It cleanses things. It burns away the old to make room for the new. Even the word focus comes from the Latin word for hearth or fireplace. The fire was the center of the home and the center of the mind. These myths remind us how much we respected fire. We knew it was a double-edged sword. It could cook your dinner, but it could also burn down your house. It was a godlike power that we had to handle with great care. Even today, we use fire in our ceremonies. We light candles on birthday cakes and torches at the Olympics. We are still honoring that ancient gift. Now, let's bring our story to the present day. You might think fire is less important now because we have electricity, but look closer. When you turn on your car, a tiny explosion of fire happens in the engine. When you turn on your lights, that electricity often comes from a power plant that uses heat and fire to create energy. Our entire modern civilization is built on the mastery of heat. We used fire to melt metal to make tools, then engines, and then computers. We have moved from the campfire to the internal combustion engine, but the principle is the same. We are using energy to change our world. However, our relationship with fire has changed. We don't see the flames as often. We just flip a switch or press a button. But if you ever go camping, you will feel it. You will sit by a fire, and you will feel a deep sense of peace. You will watch the flames dance, and you will feel the same warmth your ancestors felt 50,000 years ago. It is a connection to our deepest past. It is the story of how a small, weak animal became the master of the world. Thank you for joining me by this digital campfire today. I hope you enjoyed our journey through the history of fire. The next time you strike a match or see a flickering candle, remember, you are holding a piece of history. You are holding the spark that made us human.